The question at hand today is Xbox games that have been termed or deemed trash. Now, this is basically fanboy warfare. Some games, maybe you can say were bad, maybe you can go as far as saying trash, but when it comes down to it, you have to take a very objective look to say, okay, how did players receive these games? What have they been doing with these games? And how have these games been ranking in order of magnitude in terms of sales? Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're looking at the Steam Best of 2023. We're also going to look at the Steam Best of 2022. And we're going to see if there's a thread that you can draw from these so-called trash games that have been looked at as, not so impressive, but how they've been ranking and how they've been faring when it comes down to their position in the Steam rankings. Now, I can't speak for console because we don't have console numbers. We can interpolate, we can hypothesize, but let's just take a very close look at Sea of Thieves. This game has been very interesting because the moment it left the coffers of Xbox's studios, it seemed like a resurrection of some kind happened around 2020 or so. I don't know what happened, but it appears to me that the game has been very interesting and very sneaky. Look at this particular list I have right here. This is Steam Best of 2022 and Steam Best of 2023. Now, this is a ranking that shows you the games that were basically the top grossing games in Steam's own estimation. So basically how much money they brought in, randomized in different categories. So in the category themselves, they will have to basically be close to one another. As of 2022, if you look at the Steam Best list, this game was in the silver category. At this point, though, the game was already about 4 years old or something, right? But the game was still bringing in money that was close to games like V Rising that sold 5 million units, as we know now. Now, I don't know if he had sold 5 million units at the time, maybe 2, maybe 3 million units, who knows? And then, other games like Black Desert, which was already a game that had existed previously, but also had been netting income. Then you have Elder Scrolls Online, which you can take its metrics. A game came out in 2014, but had been making around 15 million every month. Now, that could be on the high side, and then the game like Sea of Thieves can be on the low side. You come to Steam's Best of 2023. The game is still sitting in the exact same spot, ranking with the new games that came out at the time. Some of them may be impressive in their sales, some not so impressive. Maybe it ranks higher than them, like Jedi Survivor, Dead Space, Forza 5, BattleBit, NBA 2K23, Black Desert, Lethal Company, which was probably one of the highest sold single-player games of the year 2023. And you'll realize that this little game over here, this live service game, is taking the time of gamers and players. What has happened here and what has transpired here? This is a classic case of one man's trash is another man's meat. Or you can say one man's meat is another man's poison. As the PlayStation community, or the talking heads, the vocal part, were loud, castigating Xbox's games as games that they weren't interested in, and Xbox players were, in a sense, also trying to rebut them and defend the games, they necessarily missed out on something very interesting. Both games are income earners. You see, there are one and dones, games that show up one time and then they're out of the running. And then there are these games that continue to bring in dough. Because if we take a very close look from 2022 to 2023, there's a PlayStation exclusive that, in quotes, that came into the foray around that same 2022 timeline with Sea of Thieves. Yes, look very carefully and you're going to see Marvel Spider-Man Remastered. That was actually the first year that it hit the PC platform on Steam. But guess who was in the same category with it? Sea of Thieves. The very next year, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is nowhere to be found in this category. Neither is it anywhere to be found in the category below. Okay, well, there. It gets bumped down 1 to bronze while Sea of Thieves stays in the same category. Do y'all see what I'm trying to play at? I'm trying to say that it seems like these sustainable games, yes, there's a kind of a bad light cast on live service games, to be honest, because some of them, many of them can be really gougy, trashy, straight from that. Those, if I were to call a game trash, I would call a live service game trash, even though I've played many of them. In fact, right now my footage is even the Division 2, which I played multiple years of, right? But what the spending does in terms of the way they bring out content and stuff is that it opens the door for people to be able to go and patronize, maybe customize their characters, buy new content, and all of the above. And if we think about it, just a simple comparison in this regard with Sea of Thieves and Marvel Spider-Man 2 Remastered on PC, it appears that that game has already grossed more than these PlayStation's exclusive, because it's a one and doneer at the end of the day, while Sea of Thieves has been bringing in money from even previous years. Now, note that we only looked at 2022 and 2023. That's just the reality. What would happen, though, if we went back to, say, maybe 2021? Would we see Sea of Thieves in that category? It's a very peculiar question, but believe you me, I say we do. Sea of Thieves at this point is ranking in sales with games like Red Dead Redemption. It's ranking in sales like Forza Horizon 5 and 4. It's ranking with It Takes Two and also Elder Scrolls Online. So basically eating free money. No one is bothering it. At this point in time, Cyberpunk 2077 is low on the totem pole. It had just come out. It was going through all kinds of stuff, and it's being sold on multiple platforms too, by the way. Just so you know, I'm not, categorizing. I'm just putting it on the Steam charts. But this game's been eating money all this while, right? While PlayStation's games that it refused to bring to other platforms are extinguishing there, and a game like Sea of Thieves has the potential and the propensity to receive another boost and another revival. Rather than making a whole new game, they can have this continuity that happens with these kinds of games. The reason I think PlayStation is probably not geared up for these live service games is because in the core of their business, they don't necessarily seem like they have that DNA for value proposition. To make a good live service game is to give good value that players will actually be happy with and patronize you. And so far, I think this has basically been antithetical to PlayStation's own ecosystem and the way that they do business. It is what it is. It is what I'm seeing. It is what I'm sensing at the end of the day. And pardon the noise. I know this is when I was talking to Everborn the other day saying, hey, man, I want to buy a 50 series, but he and I were talking about some gear and some stuff that we want to buy. And he knows the reason why I'm not getting the 50 series is exactly because there's a lot of activity in the house while I'm recording videos. So just, hey, you hear the little kids just say, these little kids trying to be in the video and stuff. But back to the topic at hand, it really does go in to highlight the fact that we need to basically think about if PlayStation can actually even cut it. Because it's one thing to make a good live service game. It's one thing to make a good game with good mechanics. It's another thing to support your live service game. It's another thing to support your live service game from a perspective of that live service game actually providing enough value for your audience and your consumer and your customer that it actually makes sense for them to continue to patronize your game. And right now, with the one and dones that PlayStation makes, the way that it actually prices a lot of its ecosystem, I don't know if they really are about the life, to be honest. Even with Helldivers 2, they basically cut off the foot from their own game while it was successful, just because they don't have in their body the ability to do anything pro-consumer. I mean, have you even thought about it? That this company said, you know what? We're going to enforce this PlayStation Plus account, and we're going to go ahead and delist the game from countries where it's not supported, even while the game was making them more money than Marvel Spider-Man 2. So again, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being, overly, I'm not exaggerating. I'm just stating that I just don't know how they're going to do this without making a fundamental shift in their business ideology. Thanks so much for watching. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Also, kind of change mics. Talk to me and give me some feedback. Peace out.